While hosting a family dinner, my husband's father took my plate and said, "You eat after the men." Stunned, I reached for it, but my husband just shook his head. "It's tradition," he murmured. The next day, I sent out invitations for a dinner they never expected. When they arrived, they learned exactly how I felt. My husband, Richard, and I had been married for 3 years. I wouldn't say it was a bad marriage, but I'd started noticing little things that didn't sit right with me. He wasn't abusive, he wasn't mean, but there were times when he seemed different around his family. His father, Paul, was one of those old-school, men-run-the-house types. His mother, Carol, was quiet and never challenged him. His brother, Mark, was basically a clone of their father, loud, opinionated, and convinced women should know their place. His brother's wife, Anna, was sweet, but she always looked tense, like she was waiting for someone to tell her to shut up. I didn't grow up like that. My parents raised me to believe that respect goes both ways. That a marriage is a partnership. That a woman doesn't just exist to serve a man. So, while I knew Richard's family had some old-fashioned ideas, I figured as long as he wasn't like them, it didn't matter. I was wrong. It was a regular Saturday. No holiday, no special occasion, just a simple dinner at our house. I had spent the entire day cooking. Not because anyone expected me to, but because I liked to cook. I liked making a home feel warm and welcoming, and honestly, I wanted to impress them. I made roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, collard greens, cornbread, the whole works. I plated everything beautifully, set the table, lit a few candles. I was proud of how it all came together. When everyone arrived, there were the usual greetings. Paul made some comment about how Richard had really lucked out with me, which was his way of saying, "Good job finding a wife who cooks and cleans." I smiled through it. I was used to it by now. We sat down, and I brought the plates to the table one by one. I set my plate down last, right in front of my seat, and was just about to sit when I felt a hand reach across me. Paul. He took my plate, took it right out from in front of me, and passed it down the table. To Mark. "You eat after the men," he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I froze. I actually laughed because I thought it had to be a joke. Who the hell says something like that in 2025? But then I looked around. Mark was already digging in like nothing had happened. Carol was staring at her plate, silent as ever. Anna looked uncomfortable but kept her head down. And Richard, my own husband, just gave me this look. A look that wasn't shame or disbelief or anger at his father. No, it was a look that said, "Don't make a scene." Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "It's tradition." Something inside me snapped. I wasn't raised to be someone's afterthought. I wasn't about to sit there, in my own home, and wait for permission to eat like a damn servant. But I knew if I blew up right then and there, I'd just be dismissed as overreacting. So, I did something worse. I said nothing. I sat there, still as stone as they ate. I didn't reach for another plate. I didn't touch the food I had spent hours making. I just sat there waiting. I watched Richard laugh at something Mark said. I watched Paul take second helpings. I watched Carol eat in silence like she had been doing her whole damn life. I let the anger simmer. And I started planning. The next morning, I woke up early and sent out a group text. "Dinner at our place again next Sunday." My treat. Richard looked at me, surprised. "Another dinner? Are you sure? You were pretty quiet last night." I smiled. "I just want to make sure your family knows how much I appreciate them." The following Sunday, I went all out. Prime rib, garlic butter shrimp, scalloped potatoes, homemade bread, roasted asparagus, the best food I had ever made. The kind of meal people remember. The kind of meal that makes your mouth water the second you smell it. By the time they arrived, the house was filled with the scent of roasted garlic and butter. The table was set beautifully. The food was steaming hot. The men sat first, just like last time. They reached for their forks. And that's when I struck. I stood up, walked over, and took their plates right out from under them. One by one. Then I handed them to the women. Carol, Anna, and me. "You eat after the women," I said, keeping my voice as even as Paul's had been the week before. The silence was instant. Paul's jaw tightened. Mark scoffed, shaking his head like I was being ridiculous. Richard blinked at me. "Babe, what are you doing?" I picked up my fork and took a slow, deliberate bite. "It's tradition." Paul pushed back from the table. "We don't do things like this." I chewed, swallowed, smiled. Exactly. Mark was getting red in the face. "This is stupid." "Oh!" I tilted my head. It wasn't stupid last week. Anna, sweet, quiet Anna, let out the smallest snort of laughter. She quickly covered it with a cough, but I caught it. And I could tell that, for the first time, she was really looking at her husband. Carol, for the first time ever, picked up her fork before Paul. She still looked nervous, but she did it. And I took my sweet time eating. The men just sat there, uncomfortable, hungry, and completely powerless. And I wasn't even close to done. When I finished my plate, I leaned back, wiped my mouth, and said, "Since the women cooked, the men can do the dishes." The look on Paul's face? Priceless. Mark actually laughed, thinking I was joking. But when I didn't move, when I didn't start clearing plates like some obedient little housewife, he realized I wasn't. And Richard? Oh, my dear husband? He hesitated, looked at me, then at his father. Then he sighed, stood up, and started collecting plates. And just like that, the balance of power shifted. That night, after everyone had left, Richard and I sat in the kitchen. The sink was still full of dishes. He was quiet, swirling his drink in his glass, staring at the table like it had betrayed him. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, waiting. Finally, he spoke. "What the hell was that?" I raised an eyebrow. "Dinner." He let out a humorless laugh. "You humiliated my dad." I tilted my head. Did I? Or did I just show him what it feels like to be on the other side? Richard set his drink down harder than necessary. "You made everyone uncomfortable." I shrugged. "Good." His jaw clenched. "I don't understand why you had to make it a whole thing." And that's when I lost it. I slammed my hand on the counter. "Oh, so it was fine when your dad did it to me, but when I do the exact same thing, suddenly it's a problem? That's just how he is." No, I cut him off. "That's just how you let him be. And that's how your mom lets him be. And that's how your brother treats Anna. And I guarantee that's exactly how he's raising his sons to be, too." Richard flinched at that. I softened my voice, but not my resolve. "I am not some submissive housewife, Richard. I am your wife. Your partner. And if you think I'm going to sit there and wait my turn like I'm less than you have another thing coming." He exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temples. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "No. I'm finally making it as big as it needs to be." The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was Anna. "Anna, are you awake?" "Me? Yeah. What's up?" "Anna, can we talk?" I glanced over at Richard, who was still asleep, then slipped out of bed and went downstairs. I called her. She answered immediately. She hesitated. "I wanted to say thank you." I frowned. "For what?" "For standing up to them," she said, her voice quiet. "For showing me that I'm not crazy for thinking this isn't normal." I sat down at the kitchen table. "Anna, how bad is it?" She let out a shaky breath. I don't know. I mean, Mark's never hit me or anything. But she stopped. "He talks to me like I'm a child. He tells me what to wear, what to cook, who I can and can't see. If I ever push back, he tells me I'm emotional or hysterical and that I need to calm down. And his dad backs him up every time. If I tell Mark something upsets me, he just says I'm being dramatic." My hands curled into fists. "And last night," she continued, her voice even softer, "when you flipped the script, I watched Mark's face. He was furious. But not because he thought it was unfair. It was because, for the first time, he wasn't in control." I swallowed. "Anna, what do you want to do?" Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, "I don't know." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "You don't have to decide anything right now," I said. "But you do deserve better. Just know that, okay?" "Okay." I could hear the tears in her voice. And I knew, in that moment, something had shifted in her, too. I didn't expect him to call me. But 2 days later, I was at work when my phone rang. "Paul." I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. "Hello?" Silence. Then, a slow inhale. "You think you're clever, don't you?" I leaned back in my chair, pressing my fingers against my temple. "Paul, if this is about the dinner, this is about my son." I frowned. "Excuse me?" "You embarrassed him in front of his family. You put ideas in his wife's head. You've been poisoning him against us since the day you married him." I almost laughed. "Poisoning him? By expecting to be treated like a person." "Don't play dumb," Paul spat. "I know you're kind. Women like you don't want equality. You want control. You want to turn my boy into some weak, spineless excuse for a man. I raised him better than that." I took a slow breath. And then, calmly, I said, "Well, Paul, if you're so convinced your son is weak, maybe you should ask yourself who raised him that way." Silence. Then, a low chuckle. "You think you've won something here," he said. "But let me tell you something, sweetheart. A woman who fights her husband's family doesn't stay married for long." And then he hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, my heart pounding. Not because I was scared. Because I was furious. Paul had underestimated me. He thought I was just some defiant little girl who needed to be put in her place. But what he didn't realize was that I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for Anna. For Carol. For every woman in that family who had ever been forced to wait their turn. And Paul? Oh, he had no idea what was coming next. Paul's words echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. A woman who fights her husband's family doesn't stay married for long. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And I knew exactly what he was trying to do. He wanted me gone. He wanted Richard to come crawling back to him, apologizing for letting his wife get out of control. He wanted his son to be just like him, loud, proud, and in charge. But here's the thing, I wasn't going anywhere. Over the next week, I noticed a shift in Richard. At first, he was quiet, walking on eggshells around me. He didn't want another fight. He didn't want to talk about the dinner, his father, or anything that had happened. But then, little things started happening. He would leave the room whenever I was on the phone with Anna. He started defending his dad more. He just comes from a different time, he muttered one night as we were getting ready for bed. You can't change people like him overnight. I stared at him. And you think he should stay that way? Richard sighed. I think you could have handled it differently. I scoffed. Like how? By smiling and nodding while he treats me like an unpaid maid? You don't get it, he snapped, his voice suddenly sharp. That's just how things work in my family. I stared at him, something ugly twisting in my gut. Is it? I asked, my voice cold. Because I don't remember agreeing to be part of a family where I'm treated like a second-class citizen. Richard groaned, rubbing his temples. God, you always do this. You always have to turn everything into a fight. I laughed, actually laughed. Me? I turned things into a fight? I turned off the bedside lamp and lay down, my back to him. And for the first time since we got married, I wondered if I had misjudged the man lying next to me. 2 days later, Anna called again. Only this time, she wasn't crying. She was furious. I can't do it anymore, she whispered. I can't keep living like this. I sat up straight. Anna, what happened? He found the pamphlets, she said, her voice shaking. What pamphlets? She exhaled. I went to see a lawyer. Just to ask questions, just to see what my options were. But Mark, he must have gone through my purse. He found them last night. Oh, shit. What did he do? I asked, my heart pounding. He freaked out, she said. Started yelling about how I was humiliating him, how I was trying to ruin our family. He grabbed my phone, told me I wasn't leaving him. Ever. My stomach dropped. Did he? I hesitated. Did he hurt you? Silence. Then, in the softest voice, she said, not yet. That was all I needed to hear. I didn't hesitate. Anna, listen to me. You need to leave. Now. I know, she whispered. But I don't know where to go. You come here, I said immediately. Pack a bag, take your car, and get out before he comes home. She hesitated. But what if I don't care? I cut her off. You are not staying in that house one more night. She took a shaky breath. Okay. I hung up and immediately started getting things ready. I pulled out blankets, set up the guest room, and made sure she'd have everything she needed. But right as I was about to call her back to check in, Richard walked in. Hey, he said, dropping his keys on the counter. Who was that? I hesitated. I had never lied to my husband before. But this? This wasn't his business. Just Anna, I said, keeping my voice casual. Richard narrowed his eyes. What's going on with her? I shrugged. Just girl talk. He stared at me for a long moment before nodding. And I felt my stomach churn because I knew. Something had shifted between us. And I had no idea if we'd ever come back from it. Anna showed up 3 hours later. Her hands were shaking as she pulled her suitcase through the door. Her eyes were red from crying. I pulled her into a hug. You're safe now, I whispered. She nodded against my shoulder. I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll figure it out, I promised. I helped her settle in, making sure she had everything she needed. She didn't eat much that night, just picked at her food, staring at nothing. But then, right as we were about to go to bed, her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Mark. I snatched the phone from her hand and silenced it. A second later, Richard's phone rang from the bedroom. We froze. Then, voices. From outside. Anna turned pale. No. No. I peeked through the blinds. Mark was standing in our driveway. And he wasn't alone. Paul was with him. I felt ice crawl up my spine. They knew. And they weren't leaving without a fight. Mark and Paul stood in my driveway, silhouetted by the porch light. Anna was shaking beside me, gripping the fabric of her shirt like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her phone buzzed again. Another call from Mark. Then a text. Mark, come out. Now. I took a deep breath and turned to her. You don't have to do this. You don't owe them anything. She swallowed hard. If I don't go out there, he'll just keep coming. That's when Richard stepped into the room, still holding his ringing phone. He took one look at Anna, then at me. His face twisted with realization. You knew, he said, voice low. I didn't answer. He scoffed, shaking his head. Jesus Christ. You went behind my back. You didn't even tell me. I clenched my jaw. Because I knew you'd try to stop me. Richard's nostrils flared. Mark is my brother. You don't think I should have had a say in this? Your brother is scaring his wife so badly that she had to run in the middle of the night, I snapped. Do you really think I give a damn about how that makes you feel? He didn't respond. Because we both knew the answer. Another knock. Harder this time. Anna, Mark's voice came through the door, his tone eerily calm. Come outside, babe. Let's talk. Anna shrank back, shaking her head. Paul was next. You're embarrassing yourself, girl. And you're embarrassing our family. You don't just walk out of a marriage. I felt a new wave of rage rise up. I turned to Richard. Are you going to let them do this? Right here? In our house? Richard looked torn. Then, without a word, he went to the door. I stiffened. Richard, he opened it. Mark and Paul stepped inside like they owned the place. Anna flinched as Mark walked toward her. You're being crazy, he said, his voice almost soft. Come home. Let's talk like adults. But I saw the way his fingers twitched to his sides. The way his eyes darted to Paul for approval. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to win. Anna shook her head. No, Mark's face hardened. No. Her voice wavered, but she didn't back down. I'm not coming back with you. Mark exhaled through his nose, like he was trying to keep himself in check. Then he turned to Richard. Tell her she's being ridiculous. Richard didn't say anything. Paul took over. He turned his glare on me. You did this. I crossed my arms. Damn right I did. His eyes darkened. You are ruining this family. I let out a cold laugh. No, Paul. I'm just exposing what's already broken. He stepped closer, his presence towering, meant to intimidate. But I didn't move. You have no idea what you've started, he said, voice low. And that's when I snapped. I looked him dead in the eye. I started nothing. You did. The day you taught your sons that their wives were beneath them. The day you told your daughter-in-law that she had no right to leave. The day you raised your son to think control was the same as love. Paul's jaw clenched. His fists balled. And then, Anna spoke. I'm filing for divorce. The words dropped like a bomb. Mark turned to her, stunned. You don't mean that. Her lips trembled, but her voice was steady. I do. Paul stepped forward, voice dangerously low. No woman in this family gets divorced. Anna lifted her chin. Then I guess I'm not part of this family anymore. And just like that, the power shifted. Paul couldn't believe it. His control, his legacy, was slipping through his fingers. Mark looked like he had been punched in the gut. And Richard? Richard looked like he was realizing, for the first time, that maybe, just maybe, his father wasn't the man he thought he was. Then Paul did something that shocked everyone. He turned to Richard and said, "Get in the car." Richard blinked. What? Paul's face was red with fury. I will not let this woman poison you. We are leaving. My stomach turned to ice. Paul wasn't just trying to control Anna. He was trying to take Richard with him. And Richard. Richard hesitated. For one terrifying moment, I saw it. The pull. The years of conditioning. The need to be a good son. And I thought, oh God. He's going to go. But then I'm not leaving. Paul's face froze. Mark looked just as shocked as I felt. Richard squared his shoulders. You heard me, Dad. I'm not going. Paul's eyes burned into him. Don't be stupid, boy. You walk away from us and you're done. No coming back. Richard took a slow breath. Then, he looked at me. And he said, I'm staying with my wife. Paul stormed out. Mark was too stunned to say anything. He just gave Anna one last look. One full of anger, betrayal, before following his father. The door slammed behind them. And then, it was quiet. Anna was crying. But for the first time, I didn't think it was from fear. I turned to Richard. Are you okay? I asked. He let out a deep, shuddering breath. I don't know. And I understood. He had lost something tonight. A father. A brother. But maybe he had gained something too. Anna filed for divorce. She moved into her own place, got a job, started therapy. And for the first time in years, she smiled without fear. Carol, shockingly, left Paul. She packed a bag and disappeared one night. When she finally reached out, it was from a small apartment 3 towns over. She was starting over. And Richard? Richard struggled. There were nights where he almost called his dad, where the weight of undoing years of conditioning nearly crushed him. But he chose me. He chose us. One night, months later, he sat beside me and whispered, I see it now. I didn't ask what he meant. Because I already knew. And in that moment, I realized, this wasn't just my victory. It was ours. And we were finally free.